Hi everybody, I'm Missi Matthews and welcome inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex and to a off-season edition of Steelers Live. Will be coming to you throughout the next few months. Joining me today to talk all things Steelers, we have Mike Prisuta of the DVE Morning Show, also the Steelers Radio Network, former Steelers great Craig Wolfley, also with the Steelers Radio Network and Hall of Famer, so glad I could say it once again, and former Steelers outside linebacker Arthur Moats. And guys, a lot is going to be happening this offseason. I know we're going to be talking about quarterbacks a lot. We're going to get to that in just a bit, but let's start with TJ Watt finally winning Defensive Player of the Year. Mike, when you look back at his 2021 season, what jumps out to you?
Just the way that he was able to pile up the numbers he did despite missing as much time as he did. It was not an insignificant amount of time that TJ Watt was unavailable, but he had some monster games. What was it, 3.5 against the Ravens? And the way he came up big, the play that really sticks out, the Seattle game in overtime, stripping the ball. Not a whole lot more he could have done, I think, given the time he was on the field, and more importantly, the time he was not.
And I would also say this, man, when you look at TJ in terms of the step that he took this season, the criticism for him before was he would have big games and then kind of disappear for a week or two. But you saw this year, man, even when he was hurt, he still was coming out there being productive. How many games in a row could we point to him having multiple sacks, QB hits on consecutive weeks, man? To me, that was what jumped off the screen to me watching him this season.
You know, the other thing I love about it, it's not just when he does it and why he does it or the wherefore, it's how he does it too. I mean, if you look at him and Arthur, yeah, I'd like to get your perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a guy, he is literally an encyclopedia of a Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee type of, multiple use of his hands, combative close quarter combat guy. I mean, he is a modern encyclopedia of pass rushing moves, and he puts them together, and he does it with his brain as well. It's not just his speed, his power, his leverage, but his brain, the knowing the when, why, and how. I mean, being able to put that all together and you come through at big moments like you're both talking about, that's a huge thing.
Well, Wolf, that's because he played defense. And on defense, we got this thing called a rush plan. Because I know on offense, you offensive linemen, y'all just back, punch, and that's it. We actually have to think these things through. So, yes, TJ Watt does a great job with that. But I also love how smooth he is as well. When you watch him, he always looks like it's effortless to him, right? Even though he's working hard, it's never a struggle. And that is because of the rush plan, but also with that elite skill that he has, man. His hand-eye coordination is some of the best you're going to see at the NFL level. It's also one of the best characteristics that he has in terms of his pass rushing ability.
I like that we're a little feisty here in the offseason. And TJ Watt, Mike, I would say we understand what he's like on the field. A little different off the field. And when he accepted the award, he admitted afterwards, public speaking, not really his thing. We all know that from being around him. But there was a little bit of a threat at the end. I'm using this as motivation. Trust me. He watched JJ get the award so many times. Finally, he was able to get it. And, knowing TJ, I really do think that he does mean business. And who knows what's to come next season. But he is one of those guys that is probably already back training in Wisconsin and starting to prepare his body for 2022.
There's no doubt about it. I would imagine he's probably completed a lifting session, a running session, and is currently ensconced in somewhere chainsawing out a block of ice and getting into the ice cold lake and hanging out there with his training session.
For all of you guys, what can he improve on, if anything? What's the next step for TJ Watt?
I think it might be one of those less is more deals, because I think the next step, not just for TJ Watt, not just for the Steelers, but for defensive pass rushes in general. Arthur, that thing you stumbled upon a minute ago, rush with a plan. I mean, you got to keep these quarterbacks in the pocket. More and more of them have the ability to get out. More and more of them are waiting for you to give them a lane to get out. And more of them can kill you when they get out of the pocket. So it might be one of those deals where defenses are going to have to come around to a little bit of an attitude adjustment and think, all right, we're trying to get there. But job one isn't getting the guy on the ground. Job one is keeping the guy contained. And then if we get to him, we get to him. If not, we get our hands off. We do what we have to do. But fewer sacks might be more advantageous to keep the guys in the pocket at the expense of some sacks. Arthur, I don't know if you buy that or not. You have rushed the passer. You see how it's being done now. Real curious to see what you think of that.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm always biased. I'm always like, no, we want as many sacks as we can get. You can never have enough sacks. It's kind of like Christmas gifts. They always keep coming and always is great. But when you're talking about the context of a healthy defense and the context of a productive defense, that does become more of the forefront in terms of keeping these dual threat quarterbacks in the pocket. Because as you said, and as we've seen throughout the postseason, man, when a guy gets out the pocket, he's able to extend and ultimately, flip the field in some occasions. So without it, that is very critical. But the one area that I would say for me that I would like to see TJ improve in is just get you back to a regular offseason. You remember last offseason, he didn't get to have his normal training camp regimen where he's out there every day with his practice reps and going to the full extent because of everything that was going on with this contract. Now that that's out the window, man, I just feel like this year when he gets that chance to really fine tune his skills, really get his body in peak condition in terms of game shape, man, I think that the sky's the limit for him even more so because now he's not going to have to deal with the soft tissue stuff that he was kind of dealing with early on last season.
No question about it. I think two things I'd like to see TJ be able to pump up the game on are, number one is his game brains. His game brains are already huge, but it's going to grow. As you know, Arthur, the more reps you get out there, the more you start to take in and you start to understand the rhythm and flow of whatever the complexities of the offense you're facing. And you start to get that little, the bat signal in your brain that says, ooh, 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 I know this play. I know what's happening. And then all of a sudden your samurai sixth sense kicks in and bammo, you make the play because it all comes together at that moment. Rather than chasing the play all the time, he can be ahead of the play. And I think that's just going to grow naturally. It's not something I want to see from him. I think that's something he naturally will grow into. As you know, that's just part and parcel of the process of becoming an experienced player. He's still a young buck in my mind.
Well, absolutely. And you remember, he didn't even have a crazy extensive collegiate career as well in terms of playing outside linebacker. It was very short because he switched from tight end. So he is definitely still growing. He's definitely still learning the position. And that's what makes him so exciting.
In each and every season, guys, he has increased his Christmas present total or sack total. We all know that he tied Michael Strahan for the NFL single season record with 22 and a half, coming down to the wire for that one. But nonetheless, he tied the record. So before we stop talking about TJ, Mike, over under for TJ in 2022, 22 and a half sacks.
I'm going to go under, but the career high of more than 8 forced fumbles.
Okay.
Get more out of the times you get back there, but back off just a little bit and keep those guys. The next time the Steelers play the Chargers, I have no idea when that would be. I would like to see Justin Herbert get way fewer rushing yards than he got in that game, and I think that's going to be a plan that is going to have to be put into place more often than not. So fewer sacks, but more impact. How's that?
I like it. Wolf, over under?
I'm sorry. I've got to jump in. Sorry, Arthur, if I cut you off. Didn't mean to. Here's the point. First of all, I want to say unequivocally, he didn't tie Mike Strahan's sack record. He beat Mike Strahan's sack record.
All right.
They just didn't give it to him. And I'm saying that there's no doubt in my mind. Gadzooks, Tyler Huntley on a 2nd and 8. That was a pass play. That was a guy that fell down on the ground. That wasn't a boarded play. He just gophered up the ball, and you got TJ. It was an easy sack. So what? It's a lot easier than Strahan putting a hand down on top of Brett Favre, right, for that record. So let's just get that clear. Second of all, I think there's more in the tank. I think if he stays healthy, that he can go over and above. So I'm going to go the over on it. And I think enough time up in Wisconsin, eating enough cheese, getting in the lake enough, rehabbing the body and all that thing, this guy can be Superman next year.
Say, get the cheese curds ready, baby. I hear you, Big Wolf. I hear you. But without a doubt, I also feel like the over is definitely in play. When you talk about what he was able to do this past season, whether we say he tied it or in Wolf's eyes, even broke it, either way, he did it in less games. When you talk about that part of it and factoring in that some of these games that he even played and he didn't even finish. So to me, I just say to myself, if he has a full offseason where he's getting out here, he's getting his practices in and his body is ready to go, man, I feel like 22 and a half, he can definitely surpass that. And I definitely think he could do that with a couple of games to spare because he is that productive right now. And if last year was any indication, I mean, just think about the attention that he was receiving. It wasn't as if he didn't, that he was sneaking up on people or he was getting very advantageous matchups. No, he walked into these stadiums and everybody knew he was the guy. And he's walking these stadiums hurt, and he still was able to be the best defender in the NFL, ultimately leading to get that DPOY award as well. So, yes, I'm going with the over as well.
And no one holds him, right, Wolf?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I didn't see that. No, that's not called holding. That's called clenching.
I figured we should ask our O-line expert for that one.
Well, Missy, I figure all referees are former offensive linemen because they do not call that holding call. So I'm sure Wolf loves that. He loves that.
All right, sticking with the Steelers offense, no surprise here. Ben Roethlisberger officially announcing his retirement after 18 years in the league, and all with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So as I said at the beginning of the show, quarterbacks, guys, we are going to be talking about that into training camp, into the preseason, into the regular season, I'm sure. But now we are at the portion of the season where it is who are going to be the quarterbacks. And we heard from Steelers team president Art Rooney II. He said nothing is off the table in terms of how they are going to acquire guys or who is going to be the quarterback. We know, Triv, that Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins were both told they are competing for the starting job. What do you make so far of the guys they have in-house right now?
What I make of the guys they have in-house right now is that, as you referenced a minute ago, Art Rooney said, we certainly won't close any doors at this point. There will be a lot of doors to open and look through. Mike Tomlin said, right now all options are on the table. I haven't heard anybody associated with the team tell me, Mason Rudolph's been here. We've been developing him. We've just been waiting for a chance to make him a starter. I haven't heard anybody associated with the team say, boy, we struck gold with Dwayne Haskins. We got him for a song. He's a first-round guy. He's going to be the guy. Certainly they are in the mix, but I think in the mix is the key part of the equation right now. Some guys are coming in here. It's just a question of how they get here and who they are. So stay tuned. This, as you mentioned at the outset, this is going to be fun to keep an eye on throughout next season, really.
Yeah, man, you hit it right on the head there as well when you said they're in the mix. Because when I think of Mason and I think Haskins, it's pros and cons to both of these guys. When I think of Mason, I say, hey, this is a guy that has started a full season or close to a full season here in Pittsburgh, and he had a rocky go, right? It was kind of inconsistent, but we've also can point to times where he's come back since then, and it's looked improved. It's looked impressive. You think about the week 16 game against the Browns 2 seasons ago. He comes in, he looks good stretching the ball downfield. He had moments this year against the Lions as well. But when I think of Haskins, pros with him, elite level arm talent, we know that was one of the biggest reasons why he was drafted where he was drafted. And some people thought that he slipped in the draft on top of that. But in terms of the cons for both of these guys, inconsistent play. So with that, I think that, man, depending on how this team is going to feel about Mason in terms of do they think he can take that next step, I at least feel like they're giving him that chance. They're at least going to give Haskins that chance by keeping them in that conversation. And if you're those two guys with the track record that they currently have, I mean, realistically, that is probably your best situation right now.
I can only go right with you. Look, all I can say is let the competition begin. Both these guys are capable. We'll see. They in the mix is the key phrasing. But, you take a look at a guy like Mason. There were some rough patches, but he's called on the night before the Detroit game in a situation where it's a little cool, a little rainy. And he goes 30 of 50 for 242 and 1-1, 1 TD, 1 interception. By golly, dadgummit, that's a good job on a very short notice like the day before. And you got to say, there's something there that I think the kid's got some abilities. Let him compete with Haskins. If you feel the need to bring in a third quarterback, some quarterback maybe that falls to you somehow, I don't know how. That's above my pay grade. You got guys there that are, they got a lot of more brains upstairs than I do. But the fact is, you got a couple of guys right now that you can have great competition going into the offseason. And if you add a third guy in, they're going to at least get a third arm, if not 2 more. Then we'll see what happens. But I'm all for letting Mason and Dwayne just go at it.
Guys, I think the interesting thing about the offseason, pro days are about to start. We know the combine, and then we head into, the real stuff in terms of the draft, but free agency is prior to the draft. So there might be a free agent you like, somebody you want to sign, but you don't know what's going to happen in the draft. There could be a player you like, but as we all know, you can see the team right before you take him. So, Triv, how do you think the Steelers, if you were in charge, will approach adding another body to that quarterback room?
If I was in charge, I bring in two. I bring in a veteran free agent that doesn't cost me a whole lot of money, similar to the Dwayne Haskins situation. Very little up front in terms of capital invested and some maybe potential big upside. But I look at this quarterback class and one guy in particular. Now, let me preface what I'm about to say by emphasizing that I reserve the right to change my mind. It's still a lot of time between now and the draft. But right now, today, as we're doing this show, this kid from Liberty, Malik Willis, to me, has monster upside. He's got a monster physical skill set. He's built like a running back or a linebacker. He's not a frail kid. He can throw it through a car wash probably and not get it wet. And he's a tremendous runner already. And, depending on how the draft unfolds, Missy, I look around picks 15, 16, 17 and think, you might be able to move into one of those spots without giving up the future of the organization. I'm going to be angling to get my hands on Malik Willis if it's left up to me. Now, probably a lot of people are watching this saying, "Thank God they're not leaving it up to Prisuta." But that's where I'm at right now. I'm officially intrigued with Malik Willis.
Well, Prisuta, I'll say this. I do share your excitement for Malik Willis. I think that dual threat dynamic that he possesses and just overall raw ability, because he is definitely more of the raw side right now, is extremely exciting, though, when you think about getting him into an organization, and especially with the way that the NFL is shifting, and along with knowing what Matt Canada offense is really predicated on, his mobility at the quarterback position. I mean, he would be the perfect fit in a sense for that. But for me, I take a little bit different approach. I don't want to have to, wait or roll the dice on one of these rookie quarterbacks. I personally would much rather use some of this cap flexibility that we do have, use some of these draft picks that we do have, and go out and actually get a proven franchise quarterback or a proven QB1. I understand that, yes, it costs, but at the same time, when you look at the pieces that this team, in terms of Pittsburgh, they already have, they are one or two pieces away from being right back in that conversation of really competing. But you have to have that quarterback to be in play for that. So for me, I don't want to waste TJ Watt's prime years. I don't want to waste Cam Hayward, especially as he's aging like a fine wine right now, and even Minka Fitzpatrick. So when I think of those guys, I say to myself, how can I maximize this window? How can I maximize this cap situation and ultimately get the best out of this bunch? Because I still feel like I have a group that can compete. And ultimately, that is by being a little bit more aggressive and getting a little bit more of a marquee name that's available right now.
Man, you both present such great arguments. It's got my head spinning, which really isn't hard to do, come to think of it. But anyhow, the fact of the matter is, I lived through the Bradshaw transition era. I played with Terry in his last year, was several years with him, then his last year. And then Cliff Stout came on, and then Marlon was there. And you know what? Everybody's going to suffer in comparison, and that's the problem. When you follow a legend, a Hall of Famer, a guy like Ben, who has just been so great for so long, we're talking almost 2 decades, guys. Anybody is going to pale in comparison to him. So be ready, buckle up, whoever you are, because when you step into that role, you've stepped into a role of some shoes. You got those are like Bozo the Clown shoes you got to step into. They're huge. Okay. So that's going to be a difficulty right then and there. And I got to tell you this much. I'm for short trips. That kid, really, I like that kid. I do. What can I say?
Well, hey, if he's the best guy, he's the best guy, whatever they think. But, Arthur, I wouldn't be afraid of a rookie, because I think the last time they threw a rookie in, he didn't lose a game in the regular season, and they went to the AFC Championship game. So
look, he's throwing down the
get the right guy. Just get the right guy.
All I'm saying is this. If you see Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger in this draft right now, you let me know. I will go ahead and I'll run to the podium and draft him myself. I have experience drafting picks. I had a Pro Bowler that I announced. Come on now. So I got you. Okay. If he is in this draft, I will be there to announce him. I promise.
Most just wants to go out to Vegas to cover the draft. I see what you're doing here. All right, we have to quickly
I was
move
trying to
on.
aim before you caught me.
Hey, I respect the power move. 3 coaching moves per se, not roster moves, but coaching moves that the Steelers have announced since the season ended. Terrell Austin, TA as the players call him, has been promoted to defensive coordinator. And Triv, I don't think this was a big surprise to anyone, especially when you hear what Minka Fitzpatrick and the players said about him.
Yeah, he's done it before. He's well known around the league and respected around the league. In-house guy. I got no problem with that whatsoever. I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of impact he can have on a defense that has done it the same way for a while now, and maybe a little adjusting, a little bit of a different approach would be a good thing if he goes that way. I'm not sure what the Terrell Austin Bible is, or what he believes in, but I think we'll have more of a chance for him to be who he is because his role has been enhanced.
Yeah, and I was going to say, in terms of, you look at Terrell Austin and how he's ultimately helped this secondary continue to grow. Minka Fitzpatrick, Cam Sutton, even Mike Hill to an extent. All of these guys under TA have developed, have went on to show that, hey, man, this guy is getting the best out of them. He's a developer of talent. So for me, if you're keeping him and you're promoting him, I'm all for that, because we've already seen the impact that he's had directly on this team. And he is a guy that's coming over with experience as well, being a previous DC at 2 other organizations.
Tremendous points by both of you gentlemen, as usual. I will just throw in the little bit of kibitz there, where everything I've heard about of Coach Austin is the fact that he respects the players and gives them input to those who are capable of doing the Minkas and so forth. And I think that says something about the man himself when you go and reach out to some of the players that you have such confidence in and take some of their input, what they're talking about. I think that says a lot about that type of guy. Yeah, I like him a lot.
All right, the Steelers have a new wide receivers coach, Frisman Jackson, who is most recently with the Carolina Panthers. And Triv, that is a group, the wide receiver group, that could look a lot different than what we have seen in the previous few years as we head into the free agency portion of this year.
Yeah, it might, and even if there are carryovers, and we assume there's going to be at least a couple, more consistency, I think, is what's needed at that position, particularly when you look at Chase Claypool, who did not have the impact scoring touchdowns in year 2 that he did in year 1. And I personally don't think his play was as consistent either. I think Chase Claypool can be a monster guy in this league. I think he can be a huge part of the success of the offense moving forward, but they got to get him locked in a little more, get him making plays more consistently that, to me, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to make.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I share that same sentiment. And when you think about Coach Frisman, I look at what he was able to do in Carolina with 2 receivers that are very talented, but at the same time are young in terms of DJ Moore and oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on his the other receiver's name. But with both of those guys down there,
my world, buddy.
But with both of those guys down there, though, you think about that, right? Young talent, Robbie Anderson, that was his name. But with both of those guys down there, right? Talented, young. And he was able to develop both of those guys into being 1,000-yard receivers at the same time. When I think of what we have here in Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, why can't we have that exact same thing? Because both of those guys are talented enough. Deontay coming off a Pro Bowl season. We know Chase has all the tools to be a Pro Bowl receiver as well. So for me, I'm hoping that Frisman can go ahead and strike lightning in a bottle twice and ultimately get those guys elevated to playing at their full potential, because they are too good to not be feared league-wide just yet.
There's no question that both those gentlemen that you're talking about, they have such exceptional talent. And the fact of the matter is, like Mike was talking about, Chase Claypool is just a monster in the making. I mean, he's there. All the elements are there. Now, who's going to put it together and get that going? I mean, it's got to come from within, but there's also the coaching eye that sometimes a fresh eye gives a little more insight and a little more motivation at certain points in time. And it'll be interesting to see how it works out. We know what Deontay is. We know the great abilities he's got, but Chase Claypool to me is just one of those guys that has just got some talent that just could be out of this world if they can plug into it correctly.
All right, and the last coaching move to mention as we sit here today on Thursday, the Steelers hired a new offensive line coach, Pat Meyer, also most recently with the Carolina Panthers. And Wolf, I'll turn to you. We know this is going to be another young group again. Who knows if they'll bring in some veteran guys from free agency. But what is the biggest thing you need to see from this offensive line unit as they hopefully take the next step and grow in 2022?
The biggest thing is taking the next step, just like you talk about. It's going to be getting back together with a healthy Kevin Dotson. It's going to be able to make sure that you've got a Kendrick Green. And I still believe, and I know at the end of last year, I talked a little bit, Kendrick could play guard too. Now, you know what? I watched tape. I got nothing to do. All right. The kids chasing around the dog and everything else. So I'm watching tape of Kendrick Green over and over. And I got to tell you something. This kid, I still believe, can be exceptional there. And I know there's some people that, whatever, you might, but I'm telling you what, this kid has got all the elements that make centers great. And one thing that he's got that you don't see in modern day centers anymore, virtually, except for guys like Maurkice Pouncey, is that fierceness and intensity and physicality that he plays with. I dare you, go watch a little bit of the Ravens tape and watch Kendrick Green take the 350-pound cheese whopper of Brandon Williams off the ball 5 yards by himself backwards. That's a man-sized task. Watch him up with Vernon Butler up in Buffalo when he just crumples Vernon, all 6'4", 330 pounds of him, and just bends him over backwards, pretty near breaking his back. I mean, gadzooks. Those are special things. He's got to come back. He's got to refine his technique. You've got to get the people massed around him, and you move forward. But I think you got to stay with this guy because I think he's the first foundational stone in the ground that you can build that line on.
Wolf, I'll give you one more. Think back to the Chargers game, the tying touchdown, the sideways pass to Pat Freiermuth. He catches it about 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and you got 51 Trey Turner stopping it from the inside, right. And then Okorafor and Green both got down the field and got great blocks. Green was down at the goal line. All Freiermuth had to do was turn and walk into the end zone. He's not only got what you talked about, but he's got the mobility and the athleticism to get to the second level. I think there's a lot there at center still.
Well, and just quickly, you brought up. Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Well, I was going to say all of these things that y'all both have brought up are what made him an exciting prospect coming out of Illinois. But the issue is right now is consistency, because all of these things are great. But when you're doing them once and you have a couple of bad plays, you kind of forget about that. So for me, when I think of Pat, in terms of Pat Meyer, I say to myself, man, he is a guy that is going to have to demand that consistency. Because, yes, when you cut the tape on with Kendrick, it flashes. You see certain things that are special. But you have to have that all the time, or 85-90% of the time. It can't be the alternative where it's this up and down roller coaster, because it's hard to just trust that and ultimately formulate plans around that. But if Pat Meyer can get that consistency out of him, man, you're right. This is a guy that could be really, really good for us long term.
Remember this, Dermontti Dawson didn't play center his rookie year. Mike Webster only played part-time. I'm just saying it can take a little bit of time, and you're right. If Meyer can come out and get this out of him, man, oh man, we're gonna have a good offensive line, I believe.
And that'll be important, because if they listen to me and get Malik Willis in here, you're gonna want to support that rookie quarterback every possible way that you can.
Mason or.
All right, just one more quick note on Kendrick Green. You were talking about Maurkice Pouncey and all of the great centers that have come from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Wolf. And, you know, he was working out, Kendrick Green, with Maurkice Pouncey just a week or so ago. They posted about it. So, you know, this is somebody who gave him, permission, we could say, to take the number 53. Now maybe pulling him in after his rookie year and helping do whatever he can to help him. So I'll say arrow pointed up, as Prisuta said, as we sit here today. I reserve my right to change my mind as well. So
I'll only say this: when you finish a year like Kendrick did, and by the way, it was still a good year, very good year. You go see the master, okay? You see a guy who has excelled in your position, and I love the fact that he's aggressive enough. He's only, gadzooks, a couple of weeks out of the season. You go to the master, and you start to work on your craft already. I like that.
All right, guys. Well, I like conversating with everybody and talking a little Steelers football, even though it is not as exciting as the regular season. But thanks so much for joining me here today on Steelers Live, and thanks to everybody watching at home. We will see everyone next time. Have a great evening, everybody.